Atlanta. Before dawn, the city breathes slow, streets empty, traffic lights changing for no one. Somewhere downtown, a glass tower catches the first gray light. 40 floors of windows, dark and quiet. Inside one of them, a man sits alone at a desk with a folder in front of him he has read 4 times. A restaurant, 1 location, 7 complaints, 4 months. One of them was a little girl. He closes the folder, stands, moves to the window and looks down at the city his mother fed for 38 years. 1 plate at a time, 1 stranger at a time, every single one of them trusted. Something in this city is broken, and he built it. 2 miles away, inside a kitchen that bears his mother's name, a man in a spotless white coat arrives before his staff. Alone, the ovens come on, a mixing bowl, careful hands. He begins to cook. Nobody is watching. Or so he believes. The little girl's name was Gracie. She was 7 years old when it happened, and she almost died eating in a restaurant that Aldous Cole owned. He didn't know that yet when it happened. That's the part that stays with him. Not the fact of it, the not knowing. The way a man can be sitting in a glass office reviewing quarterly margins, while a child is being carried out of his restaurant on a stretcher 2 miles away. He found out 5 months later, not through any system that was designed to tell him. Through a complaint report his assistant flagged during a routine audit. A single line, pediatric hospitalization, 2 nights ICU, Fulton County General. The incident had occurred in May. Aldous was reading the report in October. The family had accepted a payment of $300 6 months ago and signed something that used the word resolution. $300. He read that line 4 times. Then he closed the folder and looked out his window at Atlanta doing what Atlanta does on a Wednesday morning. Moving, breathing, people going somewhere, people coming from somewhere. And he sat with the specific weight of having been responsible for something he didn't know was happening in a place that bore his mother's legacy. That was 6 weeks ago. Gracie had turned 8 by then. The birthday that should have been uncomplicated had instead been the first one after 2 nights in an ICU and a digestive system that still wasn't right. Her mother told him this later, much later, in a phone call he wasn't sure she'd take. He thinks about that birthday sometimes. What a child deserves on a birthday. What a child should not have to be recovering from. This particular Monday, first week of October. The air has finally broken the way Atlanta air breaks in fall, suddenly, overnight, like the city remembered it was supposed to have seasons. Aldous is standing in a cemetery at 6:45 in the morning with 2 cups of coffee, 1 for himself. 1 set on the grave marker of Eleanor Cole, who opened her first restaurant in 1985 with a bank loan that 3 institutions refused before a 4th yes, and who built 6 locations over 38 years, and who died 2 years ago, still arguing with her sous chef about the temperature of the frying oil. Aldous visits every Monday, has since the funeral, not to grieve or not only. He gives her a weekly report. Revenue, customer counts, staff turnover, the things she cared about when she was alive and called him on Sunday nights to discuss whether the Decatur location was over-ordering on produce again. This Monday he doesn't have good numbers to report. Buckhead's up 23%, he says. His breath shows faintly in the morning air. But we have 8 complaints, food poisonings or illness, 4 months, 1 location. He looks at the stone. One of them was Gracie. She was 7, 2 nights in the hospital. She's 8 now, and her stomach still isn't right. The wind moves through the oak trees behind him. That's all. He picks up his coffee, drinks, sets it back down. I'm gonna handle it. He doesn't explain what handling means. Eleanor would have already known. The drive back downtown takes 22 minutes. Aldous uses none of them on the radio. He thinks about the gap, the distance between what the numbers at Buckhead show and what the complaints show. A 20% profit increases and 8 illness reports at the same location in the same 4 months is not a coincidence. It is a configuration, and configurations have explanations. His assistant, Brenda, meets him at the elevator. She's worked for him 9 years. Communicates primarily through eyebrow position. This morning, reading glasses lifted to the top of her head, both eyebrows drawn together. Which means sit down before I tell you this. Aldous doesn't break stride, my office. She follows, closes the door, sets a folder on his desk without ceremony. Health department called again. Buckhead. They've opened a formal review. 8 complaints in 4 months crossed their threshold. I know about the 8 complaints. There's a ninth, filed Friday. A man in his 60s, overnight hospitalization. She taps the folder. That's what triggered the formal review. He opens the folder, reads. His face doesn't change. But something behind his eyes goes very still. The stillness of a man who has already decided something and is receiving confirmation rather than news. What do the other 5 locations show? He asks. 3 complaints, same time period. He closes the folder. 3 across 5 restaurants, 9 at 1. He doesn't need to be an analyst to read that shape. Brett Hardin's personnel file, he says, and Roy Dunning's. And pull up my company email, the spam folder, last 90 days. Brenda pauses, just slightly. The spam folder. Someone flagged something, and I want to know what. She leaves. He opens Brett Hardin's file while he waits. 42 years old, hired 2 years ago from a well-regarded steakhouse downtown that closed 6 months after he left. Strong references. Culinary background. His numbers at Buckhead are on paper, exactly what you want. Revenue up, food costs controlled, staff turnover lower than the chain average. On paper. He's been doing this long enough to know that on paper is where the most dangerous things hide. He's halfway through Roy Dunning's file. 14 years with the company, started as a server at Eleanor's original location when she was still behind the line herself when Brenda comes back. She sets a single printed page on his desk and holds her glasses in her hand rather than wearing them, which she never does. He looks at the page. Subject line, please. Someone read this. Terrell Banks. A free email account. Date 9 weeks ago. He reads it slowly. Mr. Cole, I work the line at Buckhead. I don't know if this reaches you or gets stopped somewhere. But I have to try. Brett Hardin is doing something to the food. Not mistakes, not carelessness. He's doing it on purpose. I've seen it. I have it on video. I've tried to say something internally, and I'm scared of what happens next. My number is at the bottom, please. Terrell Banks Aldous reads it twice. Then he looks at the routing metadata at the bottom of the page. The part that shows how the email moved through the system before landing in spam. Brenda printed it because she knew he'd want it. Flagged manually. From an internal company account, not an algorithm, not an automated filter. A person with access to the company's email management system looked at this message and decided Aldous should never see it. He sits with that for exactly 1 minute, counts it, then picks up his phone and dials the number at the bottom of the page. 2 rings. Hello? Young voice, careful. The careful of someone who has been waiting for a call they weren't sure would ever come. This is Aldous Cole. I run Grace's table. I just read your email. 4 seconds of silence. I sent that 9 weeks ago. I know. I'm sorry it took this long to reach me. Are you calling to tell me to stop talking about this? No. A shorter silence. Then what do you want? I need you to tell me everything. Terrell Banks talks for 37 minutes. Aldous doesn't interrupt. Doesn't offer sympathy sounds or encouragement. He listens the way he learned to listen from Eleanor, who said the assistant's real attention was the rarest thing you could give a person. And most people were too busy constructing their response to actually provide it. Terrell talks about Brett Hardin, about what he's watched over 8 months on the line. The way Brett receives customer complaints that come back to the kitchen, not with concern, not with the professional effort that any decent chef develops, but with something Terrell struggles to name and finally just calls purpose, like the complaint is the moment he's been waiting for. He talks about the temperature violations. Produce accepted at unsafe readings because Brett waves the delivery through. Proteins handled in ways that make Terrell's stomach tighten because his grandmother taught him food safety the way other families taught faith. Not as regulation, but as for the people you're feeding. He talks about Roy Dunning, how Roy knows, how Terrell went to Roy's office 6 months ago and laid it out clearly, and Roy listened, took notes, and said he would look into it immediately. How 2 weeks later, Terrell's hourly rate went up $2 with no explanation on his pay stub. I knew what it was, Terrell says. His voice is flat, not angry, past anger. I thought about giving it back, thought about quitting. Brother's tuition went up that semester and he stops. I'm not making excuses. You're not, Aldous says. Keep going. Then Terrell talks about the videos, 4 of them. Taken on his phone over 3 months. His hands shaking each time. He deleted 2 by accident because the fear made his fingers clumsy. The 4 that remain are backed up in 2 places. I can send them right now, Terrell says. Send them. The videos arrive 4 minutes later. Aldous plugs in earbuds and watches each one twice with his office door closed, and the city moving silently outside his floor-to-ceiling windows. First video, Brett at the pass during dinner service. A plate comes back from a table, a complaint. Brett receives it from the server with a flat expression. Turns slightly, just slightly, away from the main camera angle. His shoulders shift. 10 seconds of movement Aldous cannot clearly see. The plate goes back out. Second video, morning delivery. A box of proteins. The temperature strip on the packaging reads 48 degrees. Brett's voice is almost bored. Use it. 2 words. Third video. Brett in the walk-in, alone, working through a small personal cooler he keeps on the bottom shelf. He opens it, takes something out, closes it, puts the item in his coat pocket and walk away. Fourth video. This one makes Aldous set his phone face down on the desk and put both hands flat on the wood for a full minute before he can continue. Brett at the prep station. Early morning, 6 a.m. blue light. Make out pot pie filling, methodical, careful. Then his hand goes to his pocket. His body blocks the exact action, but his arm moves. He stirs, looks left, right, continue working like nothing happened. Aldous picks up the phone, watches it again. Then he calls Dennis, his attorney, and asks about Georgia recording law and employer surveillance in food service environments. He listens. He asks about evidentiary admissibility if the employer himself enters a location undercover. He listens to the complications and doesn't flinch at them. He hangs up and opens his legal pad. He writes 4 things. Person file, Terrell Banks, do not flag. Roy Dunning expense reports, 18 months. Camera positions at Buckhead, close. He underlines the last word. Then he turns off the desk lamp and goes home to prepare. He wakes at 4:30, doesn't hit snooze, never has. He stands in his closet and looks at his suits, 12 of them, all well-made, the result of many years of wanting to be taken seriously in rooms where that wasn't a given, and reaches past them to where he keeps things he never wears anymore. Old jeans from the Decatur renovation project a decade ago, a gray shirt that still has a faint paint mark on the left cuff, work boots with dried compound on the right toe. He studies himself in the mirror, 50 years old, 210 pounds. The kind of face that has absorbed a great deal of information over a long life and given very little of it back. He looks like himself, that's the problem. He's been to the Buckhead location 6 times in 2 years. Brett Harden has seen his face. Roy Dunning has known it for 14 years. He thinks about this for a while. Then he drives across town to his brother Raymond's house and knocks at 5:15 in the morning. Raymond opens the door in basketball shorts, looking the way a man looks when he's been woken at 5:15 and has a younger brother capable of anything. Truck keys, Aldous says, and your Falcons cap. Raymond looks at him, takes in the jeans, the boots, the gray shirt. No, Raymond says. Yes. What are you doing? Something I should have done 2 months ago. Raymond looks at him a moment longer, then disappears inside and returns with the keys and the cap, and an expression that means I'm not asking because I know you and I know that means don't. Don't tell anyone, Aldous says. Tell anyone what? You haven't told me anything. Exactly. He drives Raymond's truck to Buckhead, parks 3 blocks from the restaurant, walks. The October air is cold now, properly fall, and the street is in that specific state of not quite morning. Garbage trucks and single joggers and the lights inside restaurants beginning to come on one by one. He goes to the back entrance at 5:58, knocks. A young man opens it, early 20s. Tired in the way that isn't about sleep, it's about sustained wariness. The wariness of someone who has learned to assess every new thing before deciding how to respond to it. Help you? Hear about the dishwasher position. Roy Dunning said to come in early. Name's Aldous Webb. This part is true. Yesterday afternoon, Aldous called Roy, under the cover of asking about incident reports, and worked the staffing conversation around to the open position on the wash line that's been showing in the Buckhead system for 3 weeks. He suggested Roy might want to fill it fast. Roy agreed. Aldous said he had someone. Roy said send them in the morning. The young man steps back. Wait here. The door closes. Aldous stands in the alley with his hands in his pockets. He thinks about the last time he stood in an alley behind one of Eleanor's restaurants. He was 19, and the Decatur location had just opened, and he was taking his break between the lunch rush and the dinner prep, and Eleanor came out, stood next to him and didn't say anything long a moment, and then said, "You need to know every station before you ever sit behind a desk. You hear me? Everyone." He just forgot for a while. The door opens, Roy Dunning. 55 now, heavier through the middle than Aldous remembers, gray at his temples in a way that makes him look tired rather than distinguished. He looks at Aldous with the mild, practiced assessment of a manager evaluating a potential hire. Nothing. No recognition. Not a flicker. Aldous exhales very slightly. "Yes, sir." Roy looks at the resume Aldous printed the night before. Fabricated. Previous employer. A kitchen downtown that closed 8 months ago. Reference says that route to disconnected numbers. Roy looks at it for about 10 seconds. Experience? 10 years. Mostly back of house. Did some prep work at Morrison's before it closed. Roy nods. Morrison's closing is common knowledge. Nobody to call. 12 an hour, Roy says. 6 to 2. Late means done. Theft means done. Problems mean done. Understood. Brett runs the kitchen. Whatever Brett says. Yes, sir. Roy hands the resume back. "Diane'll show you your station." And that's it. Aldous Cole, CEO, walks into his own restaurant as a dishwasher. The woman who shows him the station is Diane. 38 years old, black, with the particular competence of someone who has been chronically underestimated and has long since stopped expecting that to change. She shows him the 3-sink setup, the industrial machines, the stacking protocol, without wasting a word. "Gets loud during service," she says. "Keep up and you're invisible. Fall behind and you're everyone's problem." She starts to walk away. "Stop!" Maltz looks back and speaks with suspicion, more like a person who has seen a lot of replaceable faces through a kitchen door and is running a quick background check with her eyes. Then she reaches into her apron pocket. "Brett doesn't feed us until break. That's 90 minutes. She hands him a biscuit, wrapped in wax paper, sets it on the edge of the sink, and walks to her station without making it a thing. Aldous unwraps it, takes a bite. It is outstanding. Butter and salt, and a faint sweetness underneath, and the specific lightness that comes from someone who has made this biscuit so many times their hands know it better than their brain does. He thinks, at least someone in this kitchen knows exactly what they're doing. The morning staff arrives in the next 30 minutes. He counts faces, tracks positions, identifies who goes where and how they move in relation to each other. 8 people at opening. 3 are white, 5 are black, including a young man he clocks as Terrell Banks. 23, wiry, fast hands already at work on prep, position second from the left on the line. Terrell sees him come in, does something very controlled with his expression. A micro reset, like a machine clearing a buffer, and looks back at his cutting board. Good. Self-control. At 6:14, the back door opens and the kitchen changes. Not dramatically, not with a crash or a raised voice or anything you could point to as a specific event. It's more like pressure. The way a room shifts when someone walks in who has trained every person in it to expect something unpleasant when they stop concentrating. Brett Harden, 6 feet, maybe more. 42, but built like a man who takes his appearance as a form of professional argument. Chef's coat, spotless. He moves through the kitchen with the ease of a man in his own space, because this kitchen, in every way that matters to Brett, is his space. He walks the line, stops at Dion's station. Dion is 31, black, solid through the shoulders, with a stillness to his face that Aldous reads as a practice strategy. Brett picks up a portion of diced vegetables and looks at it, sets it down. These need to be uniform. Dion's jaw tightens. His voice stays level. "They are uniform, Chef." Brett looks at him. 1 second. 2. "Do them again." Dion picks up his knife and starts over. His hands don't shake. That's a form of courage, Aldous thinks. The small daily kind that nobody writes down. Brett continues to the new hire, a kid named Marcus, first week, and stops. The kid freezes. Brett looks at him with the assessing expression of someone evaluating a piece of equipment that might be useful or might need returning. "You're new," Brett says. "Yes, Chef. Come find me at first break. I'll show you how we do things here." Marcus nods. He looks almost grateful. He hasn't been here long enough to know what that invitation actually means. Brett reaches the dish station, looks at Aldous the way he looked at the vegetables, without warmth, without hostility, with pure evaluation. "New guy. started this morning, Aldous says. Keeps his eyes down, appropriately. Aldous Webb. You know how this works? Learning as I go. Brett studies him a moment longer than the situation requires. Then, Mavzen. Roy appears at the end of the pass. Tight ship, he says to no one in particular. Diane, 2 stations over, doesn't respond, but her hands slow slightly. Just for 1 second. Pick back up. Aldous turns back to the sinks. He scrapes, loads, runs the machine. Stacks. The rhythm of it comes back faster than he expected. The particular economy of motion that dishwashing requires. The candles that save your back. The seeks that keep the pile from getting ahead of you. His body remembers what his mind had filed away as irrelevant a long time ago. He works, and while he works, he watches. The fear in this kitchen is not loud. That's the thing about certain kinds of fear, the cystic, long-term kind, the kind that has been in place long enough to become the baseline. It doesn't announce itself. It just shapes everything. The angle of people's shoulders, the space they leave around to Brett's path, the way nobody makes a joke or asks a casual question when Brett is within earshot. 8 a.m., a delivery arrives. The driver wheels in stacked boxes, produce proteins, dairy. Brett signs the invoice without opening anything. Terrell opens the protein box, checks the temperature strip. Chef, this chicken is reading 48. Protocol is under 40. Brett doesn't look up from the invoice. It's fine. Health code says. I know what it says. Brett's voice drops. Not louder, lower, put it away. Terrell's jaw sets. He carries the box to the walk-in. Every line of him rigid with a frustration he has nowhere to put. Aldous watches from the dish station and keeps his hands moving. Then the break, 10:15. Stesk sits at the corner table. Aldous eats another biscuit. Today Diane has brought a small container of homemade jam alongside hers, sets it on the table without comment, which tells him she's been doing this for a while, feeding people quietly, because she understands that a kitchen where people aren't adequately fed is a kitchen waiting to break down. Brett calls Marcus over to the far corner during the break, away from the main cluster, away from most of the cameras. Not away from the dish station. Aldous moves slowly, restocking clean plates on the nearby shelf, staying within range. Brett's voice is low. The tone of a mentor sharing hard-won wisdom. This kitchen runs on standards, ones. That's not negotiable. A pause. But there's something else you need to understand about how we operate. Marcus nods. He looks serious. Is learning. Some customers come in looking for a problem, Brett continues. They've decided before they sit down that something will be wrong. They complain to feel important, to get something free, to cause trouble for people like us. Another pause. You identify those customers, and you come tell me. You don't argue. You don't explain. You come find me. How do you handle asks? Brett smiles, patient, paternal. The smile of a man who enjoys being the person with the answer. That's above your pay grade, he says. My job is making sure problem customers don't become repeat problem customers. Your job is to cook and flag. Understood? Marcus nods. Yes, chef. Good man, Brett says, and claps him on the shoulder and walks away. Aldous sets the last plate on the shelf and turns back to the sinks. His hands are steady. This is something he trained into himself over decades. The capacity to receive information that should produce rage and shows nothing on the outside. Eleanor called it his poker face and didn't entirely mean it as a compliment. Said it made him hard to reach sometimes. She was right. But right now, in borrowed work boots with paint on the toe, having just heard his head chef teach a brand new employee the philosophy of retaliation against the people his restaurant is supposed to serve. Right now, the poker face is the only thing he has that matters. He finishes the shift, clocks out, back to Raymond's trucks, gets in. His back is already expressing opinions. His feet are filing separate grievances. He is 50 years old, and his body has spent 11 hours reminding him that he has not done this kind of work in 20 years. He sits in the truck outside the restaurant he owns and doesn't move for 9 minutes. Then he takes out his phone and sends one text to Dennis. Day 1, confirmed, verbal evidence of a policy, retaliation against complaining customers. Need 2 more days minimum. Dennis replies in minutes. Be careful. Don't confront. Observe. Altistal types back. I know. He starts truck, drives home in the dark. Behind him, the lights inside Grace's table buckhead are still on. Someone finishing cleanup. Someone doing the last work of the day in a building that belongs to Aldous Cole. and has become, without his knowledge and without his permission, something his mother would not have recognized. He has 2 more days. He drives Tuesday, 5:48 a.m. Aldous sits in same truck 2 blocks from the restaurant. He's eating a gas station's sandwich because he forgot dinner last night. Not because he was busy, because he sat at his kitchen table until 11, and Roger Dunning's expense reports, and forgot that eating was something he needed to do. The sandwich is bad, structurally questionable. He eats it anyway. Dennis sent the expense file at 10:47 p.m., 43 pages. Aldous forwarded his own login credentials with verbal authorization, and Dennis pulled it from the company's financial systems inside an hour. The summary is attached to the front. Customer relations disbursements, 18 months. Total, $9,400. Paid in increments of $200 to $800. Never more. 12 separate transactions, 7 with no receipts attached. The vendor field on those 7 reads, miscellaneous goodwill. It's miscellaneous goodwill. Aldous had stared at that phrase for a long time last night, because he knows what it means when money moves in small amounts with soft labels and no documentation trail. He's run businesses long enough to recognize the financial signature of someone who decided that the record of a thing was more dangerous than the thing itself. Roy Dunning has been paying people, not generously, not enough to actually cover what was taken from them, just enough to convert a complaint into a resolution. Just enough to keep 9 reports from becoming a pattern that reached a corporate office 20 floors above the city. And Roy had the authority to approve those disbursements himself. Under $500, general managers at Grace's table locations have discretionary spending rights. Roy structured every payment to stay within that ceiling. He didn't do that by accident. Aldous finishes the sandwich, checks his watch. 5:56, he gets out of the truck. The morning air is colder than yesterday. Properly October now, the city finally committed to it. He walks 2 blocks with his hands in his pockets and thinks about what he needs today. Yesterday he got philosophy. Brett's attitude, Brett's instruction to the shape of how this kitchen thinks about the people it serves. Today he needs something physical, something that exists independent of testimony, independent of video files that a defense attorney could argue were staged or misinterpreted, or context. He needs Brett's own hand. He knocks at the back entrance. Dion opens it this morning. 31, solid, the same still face from yesterday. He looks at Aldous with the mild daily arithmetic of someone who has learned to assess situations efficiently. Webb, Dion says. Morning. Dion steps back. Aldous goes in. Tuesday, 5:48 a.m. Aldous sits in Slayman's truck 2 blocks from the restaurant. He's eating a gas station's sandwich because he forgot dinner last night. Not because he was busy, because he sat at his kitchen table until 11, and Roger Dunning's expense reports, and forgot that eating was something he needed to do. The sandwich is bad, structurally questionable. He eats it anyway. Dennis sent the expense file that evening, 7:12 p. After spending the day pulling it from the company's financial system using the login credentials Aldous forwarded with verbal authorization. 43 pages. The summary is attached to the front. Customer relations disbursements, 18 months. Total, $9,400. Paid in increments of $200 to $800. Never more. 12 separate transactions, 7 with no receipts attached. The vendor field on those 7 reads, miscellaneous goodwill. Miscellaneous goodwill. Aldous had stared at that phrase for a long time last night, because he knows what it means when money moves in small amounts with soft labels and no documentation trail. He's run businesses long enough to recognize the financial signature of someone who decided that the record of a thing was more dangerous than the thing itself. Roy Dunning has been paying people, not generously, not enough to actually cover what was taken from them, just enough to convert a complaint into a resolution. Just enough to keep 9 reports from becoming a pattern that reached a corporate office 20 floors above the city. And Roy had the authority to approve those disbursements himself. Under $500, general managers at Grace's table locations have discretionary spending rights. Roy structured every payment to stay within that ceiling. He didn't do that by accident. Aldous finishes the sandwich, checks his watch. 5:56, he gets out of the truck. The morning air is colder than yesterday. Properly October now, the city finally committed to it. He walks 2 blocks with his hands in his pockets and thinks about what he needs today. Yesterday he got philosophy. Brett's attitude, Brett's instruction to the entire, the shape of how this kitchen thinks about the people it serves. Today he needs something physical, something that exists independent of testimony, independent of video files that a defense attorney could argue were staged or misinterpreted, or context. He needs Brett's own hand. He knocks at the back entrance. Dion opens it this morning. 31, solid, the same still face from yesterday. He looks at Aldous with the mild daily arithmetic of someone who has learned to assess situations efficiently. Webb, Dion says. Morning. Dion steps back. Aldous goes in. The walk-in at Buckhead is larger than the ones at 3 other Grace's Table locations. Eleanor had it built bigger during the 2009 renovation because she believed in preparation the way some people believe in justice, as both a Mazzole position and a practical strategy. Everything in its place, everything visible, everything accounted for, it's still organized. Whoever does the daily stocking here takes it seriously. Labeled, dated, rotated correctly. They work for 12 minutes. Aldous and Dion moving through the space methodically, checking dates, pulling what's needed for the morning's prep. The cold settles into his shoulders, and he thinks about how his body is going to feel about all of this by Thursday. Dion works the front section. Proteins, Aldous takes the back, dry goods and dairy. The far wall has 4 milk crates stacked 2 by 2 because the secondary drainage pipe runs behind that section, and nothing can be pushed completely flush against the base. He's reaching for a case of heavy cream on the upper shelf when his hand finds something that isn't the case. Between the back wall and the milk crates, pushed flush with the corner, a notebook, black cover. Spine worn in the way things get worn when they've been picked up and set back down many times over many months. Not damaged, just broken in. The wear of regular use, he checks the walk-in door. Dion has his back to him working. Aldous pulls the notebook out and opens it. First page. A date from 14 months ago. 2 initials, always 2, never a full name. A brief entry in handwriting that is careful and even, the kind that was taught by someone believed penmanship mattered. CB, returned entree, complaint about wait time, confrontational with server, method 2, he turns the page, RW. Claimed allergy after finishing full portion. Demanded full comp, history of online reviews. Page after page, 23 entries, 14 months. The handwriting doesn't get messier over time. It gets more precise, like a person refining a practice, like someone who is proud of their record keeping. Method 1. Method 2. Method 3. Method 4. Aldous photographs every page, both hands. He has always had this instant pressure, the physical stillness that has nothing to do with not feeling things and everything to do with where he puts them temporarily. 23 photographs. He checks each one for clarity before moving on. He closes the notebook, places it back in the exact position he found it, the slight off angle of something that has been sitting in one place long enough to develop a kind of environmental memory. A notebook moved and replaced perfectly straight will look wrong. He knows this. He picks the heavy cream, walks out of the walk-in. His expression is the same as when he went in. He has made sure of it. His mind behind the expression is doing something that has nothing to do with calmness. 23 entries, 14 months. Method 1 through 4. This is not negligence. Negligence doesn't keep a log. Negligence does develop a coded notation system and hide it behind milk crates and come back to it regularly enough to wear the spine of the cover. This is documentation, the kind a person keeps because they want a record of their own work. Got the cream, he tells Dion. Need the butter too, Dion says. Second shelf left side, on it. He goes back in, gets the butter. Comes back out. Goes to the dish station and starts the morning's work. The afternoon slows. Post-lunch cleanup settles into the kitchen, and the stoise drops to something manageable. The specific exhale of a space that has been running hard and is now breathing out. Aldous finds a reason to go back to the walk-in at 2:15. A storage run Dion directs him toward. He goes in, checks the notebook, still where he left it at the exact angle he placed it. He doesn't touch it again, but on the shelf above the milk crates, a small personal cooler, the camp kind, latched shut. He saw it yesterday, and his brain filed it without fully processing it. Today he processes it, A personal cooler on a shared commercial shelf, latched, positioned where the casual eye wouldn't find it quickly. He photographs it. Doesn't open it, doesn't touch it, just records its existence. Then he leaves the walk-in and goes back to the dish station and works through the end of his shift. That evening, he sits at his kitchen table with 3 things in front of him. 23 photographs of Brett's notebook, printed at the office supply store on his way home. Dennis's cross-reference report, emailed at 6 p.m. after a full day of research, 14 pages. A legal pad where he's been building a map, connecting points, following lines, tracing the shape of something that started it as 7 complaint reports, and has become something much larger and much more deliberate than he was prepared for when he stood in the cemetery Monday morning. He reads Dennis's report. Dennis has matched 18 of the 23 initials to specific individuals in Health Department complaint records and Fulton County civil filings. The remaining 5 likely never filed anything official. They got sick, went home, and absorbed what happened to them as bad luck or their own weakness, or the random cruelty of a body that sometimes fails without explanation. He reads the 18 confirmed names. Then he reads Dennis's note at the bottom. 2 sentences. Of the 18 confirmed individuals, 16 are black. 1 is a 63-year-old woman with a documented mobility disability. 1 is a man who filed a separate complaint against the Buckhead location for inadequate accessible seating 6 months ago. Aldous sets the report down. He sits with this, not for a minute, longer. Because there is a version of this story where Bret Harton is still a cruel person who takes out his frustrations on complaining customers, regardless of who they are. That version is bad enough. That version would still require everything Aldous is about to do. But that's not this version. In this version, Bret Harton looked at 23 people who walked into Grace's table and trusted it and decided they were worth something less than others. He made that decision with the deliberateness of a person who keeps records, who refines his methods, who maintains a coded log and stores it behind milk crates in a walk-in and returns to it regularly enough to wear the cover. He chose who to harm, consistently, over 14 months. With the patient precision of a craftsman who has decided that some people simply don't matter. Aldous picks up his pen, writes 1 word on the legal pad, deliberate, underlines it, stares at it, then picks up his phone and calls Terrell. Terrell answers on the 2nd ring. Holmes sounds behind him, a television somewhere, the ambient noise of an apartment where another person lives. His brother, Aldous, remembers. Community college, half his rent. I need to ask you something, Aldous says, and then tell you something. Okay, did you ever go to Roy Dunning? The pause is short, resolved, like the question's been sitting there waiting. 6 months ago, walked into his office, told him everything I'd seen. He listened, took notes, said he'd look into it immediately. And 2 weeks later, my hourly went up, $2. No explanation on my pay stub, no note. Nothing. What did you do? I knew exactly what it was. The voice is flat, not with anger, past it. I thought about giving it back. Thought about quitting. My brother's tuition went up that same month. He stops. I took it. And every day since I've wished I'd thrown it back as this. Terrell, I know. You're 23 years old, Aldous says. You sent an email to a corporate address at midnight because you didn't know where else to send it. You recorded evidence in a kitchen where you had every reason to be afraid. You're carrying half your brother's expenses. And you took a raise you needed because not taking it wasn't a realistic option. He pauses. You're not the person who did something wrong here. A long silence. The kind that happens when someone receives something they've needed for a while and didn't know how to name until it arrived. What did you want to tell me? Terrell asks. His voice has changed slightly, quieter, more open. I found the notebook, Aldous says. Dead silence, then barely audible. In the wahinks, behind the milk crates. I photographed every page. I found it, too. A pause that carries 3 months of weight in it. I didn't know what to do with it. I'd sent the email and heard nothing, and I figured, what's more piece of evidence nobody looks at? The weight of that. Terrell walking into that kitchen every morning for 3 months with the knowledge of what was behind those milk crates. Doing his job, protecting his brother's rent, waiting for something to change and not quite believing it would. Dennis, my attorney, has cross-referenced the initials with complaint records, Aldous says. Terrell. 16 of the confirmed victims are black. The others are a woman with a mobility disability and a man who'd filed an accessibility complaint against the location. This isn't random frustration. This is a pattern with a logic. Silence from Terrell's end, long. He doesn't fill it with words, and Aldous doesn't either. Finally, I knew, Terrell says. I couldn't say it out loud. I kept telling myself I wasn't certain enough. But I looked at those names in the notebook, and I knew some of them. Regular customers. I knew what they looked like. He exhales slowly. I just didn't know what to do with knowing. You did what you could with what you had, Aldous says. Now I'm here. One more day. Can you hold one more day? I've held 243 days, Terrell says. One more is nothing. Aldous almost says something else. Stops himself. Some things don't need more words on top of them. Get some sleep, he says. Tomorrow we finish this. He hangs up, sits at the kitchen table, the legal pad in front of him, the word deliberate underlined once. He picks up the pen again. Writes beneath it, Roy Dunning knew from month 3. What writes? $9,400. 12 payments, 7 with no receipts. Then writes, who flagged Terrell's email in the company system? He circles that last one, because it's the piece he hasn't solved yet. The email was flagged manually from an internal account. Roy Dunning doesn't have the system access level required for that function at first glance. But Aldous makes a note to have Dennis run a full access log first thing in the morning. There may be a configuration in the system that granted Radroy more than was intended. Then he adds one more line to the legal pad. Tomorrow, airtight. He underlines it twice and goes to bed. Wednesday, 5:45 a.m., day 3. He sits in Raymond's truck for exactly 4 minutes before getting out. The air is colder still. Full fall now, no ambiguity about it. Someone's fireplace 2 blocks over, and the smell of coffee from the diner on the corner and the street light still a son against the gasti that hasn't decided yet whether it's night or morning. He thinks, this is the last time I walk into that kitchen as Aldous Webb. After today, everything changes. After today, it has to. He gets out of the truck, knocks at the back entrance. Dion again, nods him through. Inside, the kitchen is already warm. Oven's on, something baking. The smell reaches him before anything else. Butter and rosemary, rich and layered in a way that fills the back of the throat and triggers something automatic and trusting in the body. The smell of food made with care. Brett is at the prep station. Has been has the warmth of a space running for over an hour before staff arrives. He's working with a large mixing bowl, movements careful and deliberate. He looks up when Aldous comes in. Webb, satisfied. Good. Dish station by 6:30. We're doing a staff meal this morning. Pot pie, been working on it since 5. Yes, chef. Brett smiles, turns back to his bowl. Aldous ties on his apron, goes to the dish station. He does not look at the mixing bowl. He does not look at Terrell. He does not look at anything except the work in front of him. He sends one text to Dennis. Today, 7 a.m. Everything in position. Then one to Inspector Davis from the health department. A woman he's worked with twice on routine compliance matters. He'd reached out to her yesterday evening. She knows what she's walking into. She has 2 officers on standby. 7 a.m., he confirms. Buckhead, front entrance. He puts the phone away. And he works. He scrapes plates, loads racks, runs the machine, stacks clean plates with even spacing because Terrell told him they nest better that way, and even in the middle of everything, small professional corrections are the ones that stay. The morning moves, early service. The kitchen doing what kitchens do before the real rush. The quiet accumulation of prep and readiness. The specific focus of people getting themselves into the right state for what's coming. Diane arrives at her prep station at 6:20. She's the first one on the line most mornings. Aldous has noticed this across all 3 days, the way she comes in before she's required to, and sets up not just her own station, but checks the stations on either side, stalking anything that's running low, adjusting mise en place that the closing crew left slightly off. She does this without announcement, without apparently expecting anyone to notice. He watches her work this morning with the attention of a man who has watched this kitchen for 3 days and has learned to read what people's habits say about them. Diane's habits say, I care about this work, even when the environment that surrounds it doesn't deserve that care. That's a particular kind of discipline. The kind that comes from having standards that belong to you personally, rather than to the place you happen to be working. At 6:45, a new hire named Curtis arrives. Second week, still finding his footing, he sets up at the prep table next to Diane and begins on the vegetable cuts for the morning. His knife angle is wrong, not dangerously wrong, just inefficient, the kind of form error that costs time without the person realizing it. Diane watches him for about 30 seconds without interrupting. She is not a woman who corrects people immediately. She waits until she has seen enough to know the correction is necessary rather than optional. Then she sets her own knife down, steps beside him. Without a word, she repositions his hand on the handle, not harshly, the way a person adjusts something that matters to them. Shows him the angle. Picks up her knife and demonstrates 3 cuts, sets it down, steps back. Curtis tries it. Wrong but closer. She shows him once more. He tries again. Better, she nods. Goes back to her station. That's the whole lesson. No speech, no follow-up, no checking whether he felt adequately instructed. Just the transfer of something useful from a person who has it to a person who needs it. Aldous thinks, that is exactly what this kitchen is supposed to do. That right there. That quiet, unannounced passing of skill from one person to the next. That's the thing Brett Harden spent 14 months poisoning without ever touching it directly. He goes back to the dishes. At 9:30, Brett steps out of his office, accesses the staff meal. Easy. Standing at the pass with a clean towel over his shoulder. Take your break now. Pot pie's ready. Made enough for everyone. He carries 2 large baking dishes to the break room. 6 individual portions already plated, golden crust, steam rising. The rosemary and butter smell that has been in the background of the whole morning now arriving fully. The black staff come in. Terrell, Dion, Diane, Andre from the morning delivery check, Rashida front prep, Curtis, 6 people. 6 seats at the long table. The 3 white staff, Marcus, server Todd, morning prep Janet, are already at the smaller counter table. They have sandwiches, wrapped. Brett had brought them earlier, separately, quietly, before anyone else arrived. Aldous had watched him do it at 6:45 and filed it without reacting. Brett himself stands in the doorway, arms loose, the easy posture of a man watching something go according to plan. Eat while it's hot, he says, generous, warm even. Aldous sits, looks at the plate in front of him, for proper crust. The right color. Steam still rising. He picks up his fork. He thinks about Eleanor, about what she said about feeding people. Every plate is a small act of faith. You have to be worthy of it every time. He cuts into the crust, filling chicken, carrots, the gravy, the right color, and the right consistency. He lifts a forkful, takes a bite, chews once, stops, something wrong in the texture, a shift inside the softness. Something that doesn't belong. His jaw stops moving. His hand goes to his mouth, careful, not fast. The motion of a man removing something before making a decision about it. He opens his hand on the table. A piece of rubber, gray but torn at one end, about 1.5 inches. Soaked through with gravy. He looks at it. Latex, glove material. He turns it between his fingers, something rigid inside. He applies pressure at the torn end and works it open. A piece of metal falls onto the table, small. Jagged. The kind of edge that doesn't come from anything breaking by accident. The table has gone absolutely silent. Aldous looks up. Terrell is staring at his hand. Dion has pushed his chair back slightly without standing up. Diane's hand is over her mouth. Rashida's fork is on the table. Andre is looking at his own plate, the way a person looks at something that has just changed categories. Curtis, newest among them, looks simply confused. He hasn't processed it yet. At the counter across the room, Marcus and Todd and Janet are still eating their sandwiches. Todd is laughing at something. The sound of it from here is from a completely different world. At the doorway, Brett Harden watches. And for the space of 1 second, before his face reorganizes, something moves through his eyes that is not confusion and not concern. It is the expression of a man watching the outcome of a plan and adjusting to the fact that the outcome has gone wrong in a way the plan didn't account for. Then his expression becomes professional concern. Smooth, practiced. Everything all right? He says. Light, measured. Aldous looks at him. He does not perform anything. No anger, no shock, no satisfaction. He just looks at Brett Harden across the break room of a restaurant his mother built and lets Brett see, in the steadiness of his gaze, in the total absence of surprise, exactly how much has already been collected. He stands up. Nobody eat anything else, he says. Quiet, clear, forks down, no one argues. Your office, he says to Brett. Brett takes one step forward. I don't think I understand what. The front door of Grace's table, Buckhead, opens. Inspector Davis walks in. Two uniformed officers behind her. Dennis at the rear. Brett sees them. He moves toward the back hallway, fast, not running, the controlled speed of a man who has assessed the exits and picked the most viable one. Roy Dunning is standing there. Roy had been in his office all morning. He's coming down the hallway now because the front door opened and voices he doesn't recognize came through, and some Bob Bonnie has been understood. In the way the body sometimes understands things before the mind catches up. That the accounting he has been postponing for 14 months has arrived at the door. Aldous watches Roy from the break room doorway. Watches Roy look at Brett moving fast toward him, then look past Brett at the officers, then back at Brett. Aldous has been trying to read Roy Dunning for 3 days. The man behind the closed office door, the man who structured 12 payments and chose not to see what they were covering. What he sees in Roy's face right now is not bravery. It is not a sudden conversion to doing the right thing. It is the expression of a man who has run the calculation one final time and arrived at the only answer left available to him. The exits are closed. The cost of one more act of accommodation now exceeds every previous one combined. Roy doesn't step aside. His shoulders drop slightly. His body settles. He stands in the hallway with the stillness of someone who has stopped moving away from something. Brett stops. The officers come through. Davis comes through. Dennis comes through. Roy moves to the side of the hallway and sits down against the wall. Not dramatically. The way a person sits when the long work of running is finally over. Aldous walks past Brett to where Davis is waiting in the dining room. "Mr. Cole," Davis says. "Inspector." He opens his hand and shows her the rubber and the metal. "This came out of a pot pie made by the head chef this morning. Served to 6 employees. All of them are at that table." She looks at what's in his hand. Her expression settles. The expression of a professional receiving confirmation of something she came here to find. "Back of the walk-in," Aldous says. Behind the milk crates on the left wall, black notebook, worn spine, and a personal latched cooler on the shelf directly above it. Davis nods to one of the officers. He goes. What follows is methodical and quiet. Brett is placed in a chair in the dining room with an officer beside him. He calls his attorney with the focused efficiency of a man running out of options and organizing the ones remaining. He doesn't speak to Aldous until Aldous walks past. "This is not what you think it is," Brett says. Aldous stops. Turns. He looks at Brett Harden. Chef's coat still immaculate, 2 years in Eleanor Cole's restaurant, and he thinks about the notebook. 23 entries, 14 months. Handwriting that got more precise over time. "I have the notebook," Aldous says. "I have your videos. I have Roy's expense reports. And I have a piece of metal that came out of a pot pie you made alone at 5 this morning before anyone else arrived." Brett opens his mouth. "Don't," Aldous says. Brett closes his mouth. The officer who went to the walk-in returns with the black notebook in an evidence bag and the latched cooler beside it. Davis opens the notebook in the bag, reads the first page, turns to the next. Her expression moves through something and settles at harder. She looks at Brett. "Mr. Harden, you'll need to come with us. I want my attorney. You can call from the station." She nods to the officer. The handcuffs go on. Brett's name and the charges: criminal food contamination, fraud, reckless endangerment, assault, recited in the level tone of someone who understands that the words matter legally, even when they feel insufficient for what they're describing. They walk Brett toward the front door. At the door, Brett stops, turns back, looks at Aldous. "Your mother built something real here," Brett says. And he sounds like he means it. That's the part Aldous will think about for a long time afterward. The fragment of genuine recognition in a man who spent 14 months destroying what he's recognizing. "My mother built it on a principle," Aldous says. "She fed people, every person. She didn't calculate which ones deserved it. She fed them because feeding people well is an act of respect, and she believed every person who walked through that door was worth that respect." He pauses. "You knew that when you took this job, you used it." Brett says nothing. The officer moves him forward. The door closes. Aldous stands in the dining room. Empty tables, napkins, and Eleanor's fold on everyone. He sits down. Just for a moment. His back speaking clearly about 3 days on a station. His hands rough in ways they haven't been in 30 years. He is 50 years old, and he has just watched handcuffs go onto the wrists of the man he let run this restaurant, and he is sitting in his mother's restaurant at a table set with her napkin fold, and there is no clean word for what he's feeling. Not relief, not victory, something with grief in alongside the justice and responsibility alongside the anger and Eleanor's face somewhere underneath all of it. He pulls out his phone, calls Terrell. "It's done," he says. A silence. Then a sound is not a word, the release of something held under pressure for 243 days. "What happens now?" Terrell asks. Aldous looks around the dining room, the empty tables, the fold on every napkin. "Now," he says, "we figure out what this place is supposed to be." He sits a few more minutes, then gets up to find Davis and give his full statement. Outside, Atlanta keeps going. The restaurant stays closed for 3 days. Aldous doesn't negotiate that timeline, doesn't call Davis to ask how quickly they can move through the process, doesn't run the revenue calculation for 3 dark days on a busy Atlanta street, even though the number is not small. And his operations director calls twice to ask whether he's considered a partial closure or a soft reopening of the dining room while the kitchen undergoes review. He lets it be closed because it needs to be closed. Because some things have to stop completely before they can start again correctly. And because 48 hours after the arrest, when Davis's lab has processed the contents of Brett's personal cooler from the walk-in, she calls Aldous at 7 in the morning and gives him results that reframe everything he thought he already understood about the scope of what Brett Harden was doing. 4 small glass vials, unlabeled. The lab identifies the contents within 18 hours of submission. 2 are allergen concentrates, the kind that in sufficient quantity introduced to a dish would produce a reaction in someone with an existing sensitivity. Not severe enough in some dose to kill, but enough to make a person sick in ways that would look like a bad meal, a stomach bug, bad timing, the kind of sick that a person absorbs as their own body's failure, rather than someone else's deliberate action. The other 2 vials contain compounds that affect taste and digestion. Bitter. Disruptive. The kind of sick that comes on an hour or 2 after eating and fades by morning and leaves a person thinking they must have eaten something that didn't agree with them. Method 1, Method 2, Method 3, Method 4. Now Aldous knows what the methods are. He sits alone at his office and reads the lab report twice. The second time he reads it, he is thinking about the 63-year-old woman whose initials appear in Brett's notebook under Method 1. She'd filed a complaint with the health department saying she'd developed what she believed was a sudden shellfish allergy at 63, had stopped eating at restaurants, had started carrying an EpiPen she didn't previously need. She hadn't developed anything. She'd been given something. He closes the report, sits for a long time, the city below his window doing what cities do, indifferent, continuous, full of people who ate breakfast somewhere this morning and assumed the person making their food had basic human good faith. Then he calls Dennis. "We're not settling," he says. "We go to court. Every victim. Full disclosure on the lab results, the notebook, the expense reports, everything." A pause. "And I want every name in that notebook contacted personally, not by your office, by me." Dennis is quiet for a moment. "Aldous, that's 23 people. I know how many people it is. Some of them won't want to hear from you. That's their choice to make. But I'm going to give them a chance to make it." "Okay." Dennis shifts. "And Roy? His cooperation agreement needs to be comprehensive. Timeline, payments, when he first knew, what he chose to do about it, what he chose not to do. All of it on record. He's already talking, has been since Wednesday afternoon. Good." Aldous stands and goes to the window. And the group chat, a silence on the line. "Brett's laptop," Aldous says. 3 other kitchen managers at restaurants in the metro area. They've been sharing methods. Detective Reeves mentioned it when he called yesterday. "Those aren't your locations," Dennis says carefully. "I know. So technically the liability question is, I'm calling the owners of those restaurants myself," Aldous says. "Today. If they don't act, I'm calling the health department for each location. That's not a legal question. That's just what happens next." Dennis exhales slowly. "You understand this road is very long." "My mother ran one restaurant for 7 years before she opened the second one," Aldous says. "She understood long roads." He hangs up, gets his coat, goes to make the calls he said he would make. The staff meeting happens Thursday morning. Day 2 of the closure. Aldous calls everyone in at 9 a.m. They all come. All 8 of the regular kitchen and floor staff, plus the 3 who didn't know what Brett was doing. Marcus, the new hire, Todd, the server, Janet from morning prep, because Aldous asked everyone, and he meant everyone, and whatever happened in this building happened to all of them, whether they understood it or not. He doesn't stand at the head of the room. He sits down at the long break room table, the same table where the pot pie sat 2 mornings ago. The same chairs. He sits and waits for everyone to find a seat, and when they have, he looks around the table at 8 faces in states of exhaustion and relief, and the particular, complicated aftermath of something terrible finally being named. "I'm going to keep this simple," he says. "What happened in this kitchen was deliberate and wrong. It went on for 14 months. It went on that long partly because I was running this restaurant from too great a distance." Seeks. "I'm not saying that to perform accountability in front of you. I'm saying it because it's true and because you deserve to hear it," said plainly. He looks at the table surface for a moment, then back up. A kitchen that runs on fear is a kitchen where people can't tell the truth. And a kitchen where people can't tell the truth is a kitchen where things like this can grow without anyone stopping them. I created conditions for that without knowing I was creating them. That matters. Terrell is watching him. Dion has his arms crossed, but his expression is open. Diane is very still in the way. She's been still every time I've watched her absorb information, taking it in, filing it, reserving judgment until she has enough. "You'll be paid for these 3 days," Aldous continues. "Full wages. When we reopen, you'll see changes. New camera setup with no blind spots. Temperature logging that goes digital and gets reviewed remotely. An anonymous reporting line that goes directly to me, not a manager, not a regional director, not anyone between you and the person who owns this building." He pauses, and if anyone here ever sees something that doesn't feel right and spots it, because they're not sure what will happen if they speak. I want you to think about this room and know that speaking has a different outcome here now. Silence. Then Dion says simply and without weight, "When do we reopen?" "Saturday. If tomorrow's inspection layer clears." Dion nods. "Okay, just that. Okay, the word of a man who has assessed the situation and decided to move forward. No ceremony required." Aldous looks at him for a moment. Thinks about what that kind of straightforwardness costs a person to maintain in a kitchen like the one this has been. The daily decision to keep doing good work in a space that was being used for something else entirely. "Thank you," Aldous says. "To all of them. For staying. For the work you did in here every day. That wasn't nothing." The meeting ends without fanfare. People begin to move, chairs scrape back, the ordinary sounds of a group dispersing. After the others leave, Terrell stays. He helps Aldous fold the extra chairs from the meeting, and they work in silence for a moment. Just the sound of metal chair legs and the street noise filtering in from outside. And then Terrell says, "Before you came in, before I sent that email." He sets a chair against the wall. "I almost quit. 3 times. I had my phone out once at 11 at night writing a resignation text and I couldn't send it. I kept telling myself it was about the money, about my brother." Aldous listens, doesn't fill the space. "But I think it was also because I didn't want Brett Harden to be the reason I left somewhere my grandmother would have said was a good job." Terrell picks up another chair, sets it against the wall with the others. "She grew up in a time where leaving a good job because of how you were being treated wasn't really an option most people had. She stayed places, endured things, not because she was weak, because she was doing the math that kept her family alive." He looks at the floor a moment. "I kept thinking about her, about staying and doing the math. And?" Aldous says. Terrell looks at him. "I think she would have sent the email sooner." Aldous is quiet for a moment. Then, "Your grandmother sounds like she would have gotten along with my mother." Something in Terrell's face shifts. The fear and the weariness of 8 months falling back slightly to reveal what's underneath. 23 years old, sharp, capable of being moved by things. He almost smiles, not quite, but close. "I need to offer you something," Aldous says. "Kitchen manager, this location." Terrell stares at him. "You've been running the line here for 8 months under conditions that would have broken most people twice your age. Your technique is better than 2 of the managers I have at other locations. And you understand what this kitchen should be, not in the abstract, but in practice. because you've been watching what it becomes when someone decides the people in it, and the people it serves don't matter. I don't have a culinary degree, Terrell says. My mother didn't either. I've never managed anyone. You managed yourself through 8 months of something most people would have walked away from. You documented, you waited, you kept coming in. Aldous looks at him directly. That's most of the job. Terrell is quiet for a long moment. Looks at his hands. I need someone who understands why this place matters, Aldous says, not as a business, as a place. As a thing my mother built with a specific intention that has to be on every single service was, not just when it's easy. He looks around the break room, at the table, at the chairs, at the walls of a space that has held something terrible and is still standing. Can you do that? Terrell says. I can do that. No fanfare, no extended moment. Just a young man deciding to try, which is, in Aldous' experience, exactly how most important things begin. The inspection happens Friday morning. Inspector Davis arrives at 8 with a junior inspector and a checklist that is, by Aldous' count, 4 pages longer than the standard form. She is thorough in a way that goes beyond the current situation, checking things that were never the problem, that have always been compliant, that are fine by any standard. And Aldous says nothing about it because he understands that this is what accountability requires from the outside. You don't get to specify which parts of your house examined and after something has been found inside it. He follows at a respectful distance, present if she has questions. Out of the way when she doesn't. Terrell is in the kitchen throughout. He stands at his station and answers Davis's questions directly, without hesitation, without the careful hedging of someone trying to shape information. He shows her every temperature log, every delivery record, every protocol document that the kitchen maintains. He's been in the building since 6 a.m. Not cooking, just organizing. Making sure everything that should be visible is visible and everything that should be accessible is accessible. At 11:49, Davis signs the clearance form. Full compliance, she says. She hands the form to Aldous and looks at with the expression of a professional who has inspected enough restaurants to have strong opinions about which ones actually mean it. I'll be back unannounced. Monthly minimum. I want that in writing, Aldous says. She looks at him for a beat, then writes something on the back of her card and hands it to Tim, her direct line. You called me something feels wrong, she says. Don't wait for a threshold. I won't. She leaves. Aldous stands in the kitchen with the clearance form in his hand. Looks at Terrell, who is looking at the form with the expression of someone who has been holding their breath without entirely realizing it. Tomorrow, Aldous says. Terrell exhales, long and slow, tomorrow. That afternoon, Dennis calls with results from the access log investigation, the question Aldous circled on his legal pad Tuesday night. Who flagged Terrell's email in the company system? The answer is Roy Dunning. Roy had been given administrative email management access 2 years ago as part of a system upgrade that Aldous' IT team implemented across all locations. The access level wasn't intentional. It was a configuration error that got replicated across several general managers. Roy used it once to flag Terrell's email as spam 9 weeks ago, 3 days after Terrell sent it. Roy knew about the email, intercepted it, chose not to forward it, chose not to tell Brett it existed, chose to let it disappear. That's 3 choices in 48 hours. Aldous adds this to the cooperation agreement documentation and calls Dennis back to confirm it will be part of Roy's full testimony. Then he sits with it for a while, because Roy Dunning is not a monster. Monsters are easier. Roy is a 55-year-old man who started as a server in Eleanor's original location, who over 4 months made a series of choices that each seemed individually manageable and which assembled into something he can't now disassemble no matter how fully he cooperates. That's harder than a monster. That requires a different kind of thinking about how people end up doing terrible things without ever deciding to become terrible people. He doesn't resolve this. He's not sure it resolves. He writes Roy's name on the legal pad and leaves it there. Saturday morning. 6 a.m., the line-out's Gray's table Buckhead begins forming at 5:43. Aldous knows this because Dion texts him a photo at 5:50 with the caption, already 11 people. Could be support, could be curiosity. Either way, they're getting biscuits. Aldous sends back, let them in. He is not at the restaurant yet. He's sitting in Raymond's truck. He still has it. hasn't returned it, and realizes he's been keeping it not out of forgetfulness, but because of something harder to name, some attachment to the version of himself who drove it to the back entrance 3 mornings last week and knocked and waited, parked a block away. He could go in. Operationally, there's no reason for him to be outside. Terrell has the kitchen. The staff is ready. Prep was done yesterday afternoon, and everything is staged correctly, but he sits. Because this is the moment that matters most to him, and he wants to be present for it in a specific way. Not as the owner managing the reopening, but as someone watching whether the thing he and Eleanor built can still hold what it was supposed to hold after what was done inside it. He thinks about the 23 names in Brett's notebook, some of whom he's already called, some who hung up, some who cried. One woman, 68 years old, who told him she'd spent the past year blaming her own body for getting sick, thought her stomach had finally gotten too unreliable for restaurants, had stopped taking her grandchildren out to eat on Friday evenings, a ritual they'd had for 11 years, because she couldn't trust herself to pick somewhere safe. She said it without bitterness, with the flat acceptance of someone who has accommodated a problem so long she's forgotten it came from outside her. Aldous had sat with that call for a long time afterward. At 6:08, he starts the truck, drives 1 block, parks behind the restaurant, goes in through the back. The kitchen is alive, not loud, not the controlled chaos of a full service. Something quieter and more real, the alive of a space where people are doing work that matters and know that it matters. Terrell at the pass, reviewing the morning's first tickets 2 hours before they'll be needed, just orienting himself in the space he now runs. Dion on proteins, moving with the unhurried precision of someone who has made efficiencies into something that looks effortless. Diane at prep, knife-moving vegetables with the rhythm of a person whose hands have done this long enough to make it look like music. Andre at the dish station, the 3 sinks, the machine, the plate shelf at its particular angle. Aldous looks at it for a moment, then goes to the dining room. He sits at a table near the window. Brenda arrives at 6:58 and sits across from him without being asked. She's wearing her reading glasses on the chain, both eyebrows in a position he hasn't seen before. Something between neutral and quietly moved, an expression that means she is feeling something she has decided not to perform. "I'm a customer today," she says, opens the menu. "Are the biscuits still Eleanor's recipe? As far as I know." She nods, sets the menu down. Decision made. The front doors open at 7. The first people through are an older couple, late 70s. He moves with a cane. She has the deliberate walk of someone who has learned to work around what her joints will and won't do. They take a table near the center of the room. He looks around the space briefly before sitting, the assessment of a regular checking whether the place is still the place he knows. He picks up the menu, that one small motion. He picks up the menu and reads it, and the room keeps going. The morning builds. First service runs slowly and on purpose. Terrell has built extra time into every stage. The food comes out right. Not overcorrected into something performatively perfect. Not carrying the weight of trying to prove something. Just right. The way food comes out when the person making it is paying attention to the work and the reason for it. At 8:40, a woman at table 4 sends a compliment back to the kitchen. She asks Kira whether Aldous Cole is in the building. Kira tells her yes. The woman nods and asks her to pass something along. Kira comes to Aldous's table, leans down quietly. The woman at 4 says her mother used to bring her here when she was little. She says it always tasted like someone made it specifically for her. She says it still tastes like that. Aldous looks at table 4. The woman is perhaps 65, eating the chicken and dumplings that Eleanor put on the menu in 1992, and that has stayed on every menu through every renovation since, because Aldous never let anyone remove it. "Tell her thank you," he says. Kira goes. Brenda, across from him, says nothing. She's eating her biscuit with focused attention. After a moment, both eyebrows go up very slightly. She cuts another piece. The biscuits are right. They were always Eleanor's biscuits, and they are still Eleanor's biscuits, and that is something Brett Harden, for all his deliberateness, was never able to touch. He stays through the morning service, watches the room find its rhythm, watches Terrell do his mid-service walk through the dining room, and clocks the space the way a person takes inventory, not of tables and chairs, but of what the room is doing. watches Dion work with the unhurried focus of a man who has always known what good work looks like, and is finally in a kitchen that agrees with him. Watches Diane, between her own prep work, check in on Curtis without making it a supervision, just the way an experienced cook moves through a spc and adjusts things quietly, because that's what experienced cooks do. The room fills, then eases, then fills again for the late morning crowd. Ordinary, the most underrated word there is. After the service ends, Brenda says, "Your mother would be proud, not just for this week, for how you're carrying it." He looks at his coffee cup. "She'd also tell you that you look like you haven't slept properly since Monday." He almost smiles. That sounds exactly right. Good. She stands, collects her coat, gets some sleep tonight. The work starts again tomorrow, and it doesn't stop. She leaves. He sits at the table a while longer. Then he goes home and does exactly what she told him to. In the 3 weeks that follow the reopening, Aldous works. Not in the restaurants, at his desk, on the phone, in meetings with Dennis and Detective Reeves and Inspector Davis, and the attorneys representing the 23 victims his team has now fully identified. He makes calls personally to each of the 23. Some hang up, some cry, some want to meet. Most just want to be told directly, by the person whose name is on the door, what happened and what is being done about it. He tells them. All of it, nothing softened. Settlements are finalized in the 3rd week. Full medical coverage for anyone still experiencing effects. Public acknowledgement. $2.1 million total. Aldous signs the authorization without calculating what it does to the quarter. He also calls the owner of the 3rd resident, the one who said he needed to consult his legal team. He gives him until the end of the week. The owner calls back in 2 days. His kitchen manager has been terminated. He sounds on the phone like a man who has been awake full nights and arrived at the conversation with very little left to protect. Aldous doesn't take satisfaction in it. He just moves to the next thing. The equity audit that Terrell is helping design begins its first phase in week 2. Pay equity across all 6 locations, promotion histories, mentorship patterns, who has been passed over, and how those decisions were documented. The preliminary results arrive at the end of week 3 in a 3-page document Terrell wrote himself. Direct and sparing. Writings of someone who has decided that the truth is more useful than the careful management of how the truth lands. Aldous reads a section near the bottom twice. In 8 months on the line here, I never saw a white employee given a second chance for something a black employee was written up for once. I can't prove intent behind each individual decision, but the pattern is consistent enough that intent is the most logical explanation. That's my honest assessment. He puts the document down. I'll stares at the wall for a while. Then he picks up his phone and schedules meetings with the managers of the 2 locations where the audit shows similar patterns. He tells Dennis to prepare for the possibility that the conversations will be difficult and the decisions that follow will cost something. He is prepared for that. It is in this 3rd week on a Thursday evening that the letter arrives. He knows it's from a child before he opens it. The handwriting on the envelope is careful and large and slightly uneven. The handwriting of someone who has been taught to form letters correctly and is still building the muscle memory for it. His name, the company address, a stamp placed at a slight angle, inside 2 sheets of paper folded together. On the first, the letter. Dear Mr. Cole, my name is Gracie. My mom said you wrote us a letter. She let me read it. I am 8 now. I was 7 when I got sick at your restaurant. I am better, but my stomach still hurts sometimes. My teacher says writing letters helps when things are hard. I am writing to you because I want to ask you something. Is the bad chef really gone? My mom says yes, but I wanted to ask you myself. I like to ask things myself. My grandma says that is a good quality. Sincerely, Gracie. I drew a picture. It is a dog. I don't know if you have a dog, but I thought a dog might make you feel better. Dogs make me feel better. He unfolds the second sheet, a dog, crayon, brown with a large round head and 4 legs of varying lengths and a tail that curves upward with great optimism. Underneath, in the same careful handwriting, this dog's name is Biscuit. Aldous sits at his desk for a long time. He thinks about an 8-year-old girl who decides to ask things herself because her grandmother told her that's a good quality. He thinks about what it means to be 8 years old, and still have a stomach that hurts, sometimes from something a stranger did to your food, without your knowledge and without your consent, and while you were just trying to have a meal. He picks up his phone, calls the number from Renee's file. It rings 3 times. Hello, a woman's voice. Careful. Mrs. Martinez, this is Aldous Cole. I received Gracie's letter. A short silence, then something in the voice relaxes by a degree. She was very serious about writing it. Made me check the spelling twice. Tell her the spelling was perfect. A pause. How are you doing, Mr. Cole? Genuinely. The question surprises him. In 3 weeks of phone calls and legal coordination and staff meetings and inspections, no one has asked him that. He says, Please. I'm tired in a way that sleep doesn't quite fix. I keep finding new pieces of what I didn't know was happening, and each takes a while to sit with. And I'm angry at Brett, at Roy, at myself for the distance. He stops, starts again. Mostly I'm thinking about Gracie and the other 26 people and what was taken from them. That makes everything else feel smaller. Renee is quiet for a moment then. She wants to know if you'll write back. I already started the letter. She asked me something this week, Renee says. She asked why the bad chef did it, and I didn't know how to answer her. Aldous is quiet. I told her some people decide that certain other people don't deserve to be treated with kindness, Renee says. And that's wrong, and that when we find out someone is doing that, we stop them. A breath. She asked if stopping them makes the hurt go away. What did you tell her? I told her it doesn't make it go away, but it makes it matter. That her getting hurt wasn't just something that happened to her. It changed things. It made places safer. It's true, Aldous says. And he means it not as comfort, but as fact. She'd like to meet you sometime, Renee says. When she's ready. I'll be here, whenever she's ready. They say goodbye. He hangs up, picks up a pen and a sheet of paper. Not company letterhead, just paper, because the letter is from him, not from a company, and begins to write. Dear Gracie, yes. The bad chef is really gone. I can promise you that myself, he writes for a while. Tells her about Terrell and the kitchen, and the way the biscuits taste on a Saturday morning when everything is running the way it should. Tells her that because of what happened to her, because she and her mother were brave enough to tell the truth about it. Other people are safer now. At the bottom, he draws a dog. It is not a good drawing. He is 50 years old and has not drawn anything since childhood, and this one has legs of unequal length and ears that are more suggestion than anatomy. But it is clearly a dog. He writes underneath it, his name is Earl. He is very distinguished. He doesn't have a dog. He has never had a dog. But he decides at the moment he writes it that he is going to get one. The decision arrives fully formed and feels right in a way he doesn't need to analyze. He folds the letter, addresses the envelope, goes downstairs and mails it himself. 6 weeks after the reopening, 9 weeks after the arrest, Aldous drives to the Buckhead location in his own car. Not Raymond's truck. He returned the truck to Raymond 2 weeks ago, finally, along with the cap and a bottle of bourbon Raymond didn't ask for and accepted without comment. His own car, because today he is not going in through the back. He parks in the lot and walks around to the front entrance like any other customer on a Tuesday morning, which is what he is. The host, young, 2nd month now, the particular earnestness of someone who wants very much to do this, looks up and begins the greeting. Then recognition. A slight adjustment. Mr. Cole, good morning. Just a customer today, Aldous says, wherever you have space. He gets a table near the window. The dining room on a Tuesday is different from Saturday, quieter, more settled. More regulars whose relationship with this place is part of how they structure their week. He orders the chicken and dumplings, coffee, the biscuit that comes with the meal. While he waits, he opens his phone and reads through the second phase of Terrell's equity audit notes. 3 more pages arrived this morning, covering the Smyrna location. The findings are uncomfortable in a different way from Buckhead, not the same pattern. A different one, subtler but visible once you know to look. He makes a note to call the Smyrna manager this week. The food arrives. The biscuit first, as Eleanor always wanted. She said people should taste something warm and simple before the main thing, to settle them into the meal. He breaks it open. Butter and salt, and the specific lightness of a recipe that has been made so many times it has become part of the kitchen's memory. Right, exactly right. He eats, watches the room. A table of 3 women celebrating something. One of them has a card in front of her that the others keep pointing to. A man eating alone and reading from a tablet with the absorbed focus, someone who does this every week. Two older men talking with the unhurried ease of people who have known each other long enough that silence between sentences is comfortable. Ordinary. He has been thinking about that word a lot in the 9 weeks since the arrest. How ordinary is not the absence of meaning, but the presence of it in its most sustainable form. A room full of people eating well and trusting the people who made their food is not a small thing. It is the specific, renewable, daily practiced thing that everything else exists to protect. Terrell comes out of the kitchen at 10:15 for his mid-service walk. He spots Aldous 3 steps into the dining room, stops. Aldous raises a hand. Small, just, I see you, don't make it a moment. Terrell looks at the room, at the tables, at the woman with the birthday card, at the man with the tablet, at the 2 old friends with silence between them. He takes it in with the expression of someone doing inventory, not of chairs and tables, but of what the room is doing, what it means that these people are here, that they came, that they're eating. He nods once, goes back to the kitchen. Aldous finishes his meal, leaves a 20 on a $12 check, gets up, puts on his coat, stands at the table for a moment. Then he walks back through the dining room, past the host's stand, through the swinging door into the kitchen. Terrell looks up from the pass, raises one eyebrow. I owe you about 200 dishes from last week, Aldous says. Terrell stares at him. I wasn't joking when I told you I needed to relearn how to wash dishes properly. A beat. 2. Terrell points to the dish station. Andre took his break 5 minutes ago. That stack's been sitting. Aldous takes off his coat, hangs it on the hook by the back door, the same hook he used every morning in borrowed boots. Rolls up his sleeves, ties on an apron that someone left on the hook below the coat, goes to the dish station. The stack is real. He starts at the first sink, scrapes, rinses, loads the rack. The rhythm comes back before he's finished the second plate. The body memory of 3 weeks ago sitting in his muscles like something that was always there, just waiting. The kitchen moves around him. Tickets printing. Timers going. Voices passing information in the shorthand of people learning each other's working language. At the grill station, Dion has a question for Terrell about timing on a protein order. Terrell answers without looking up from the pass. Adjusts. Nobody makes it complicated. At the prep table, Diane is teaching Curtis something about knife angle for the second time this week. He almost has it, almost. And she shows him once more with the patience of a person who understands that skill transfers at its own pace and pushing doesn't help. He gets it right. She moves on without ceremony. Somewhere, Andre, back from his break working the far sink, starts humming something under his breath. Not for anyone. Just the sound of a person at work in a space where they don't have to be quiet about existing. Aldous loads another rack into the machine, sets the cycle. No one looking over their shoulder, no shoulders pulled in. No careful monitoring of how much space to take up, or how much sound to make, or whether the feeling they're having right now is safe to show. Just people doing work. Good work. The kind that feeds people and asks nothing from them except that they sit down and trust that what they're being given was made with care. The machine cycles. He pulls the clean rack, starts stacking with even spacing the way Terrell corrected him that first week. Terrell passes behind him going to the walk-in. Doesn't slow down, says without looking. Spacing's better. Aldous keeps stacking. I had a good teacher. Terrell is already through the walk-in door. The kitchen keeps going. Tickets printing, food going out. Someone in the dining room sending a compliment back. Aldous can hear Kira's voice relaying it to the line, the small exchange of it. Someone out there feeling fed and cared for and safe enough to say thank you. That's the whole thing. Not the arrest, not the settlement, not the audit, or the new protocols, or the monthly inspections, or any of the structures Aldous has spent 9 weeks building around this place to make sure it becomes and stays what it was supposed to be. All of that matters. All of that is necessary. But the whole thing, the thing Eleanor built from nothing in 1985, and the thing Aldous is now responsible for keeping, is this. A kitchen that keeps going. People making food for other people with the basic human good faith that the work deserves. The daily, renewable, unglamorous practice of feeding strangers well because strangers deserve to eat well and trust that the hands making their food gave a damn. He finishes the rack. Scrapes, rinses, loads. Outside, through the kitchen's single high window, Atlanta shows as a strip of sky, blue, clear November now, the air finally cold enough to mean it. The city moving forward the way cities do, full of people sitting down somewhere to eat and extending, in the background of an ordinary day, the basic trust that the person making their food is doing right by them. Most of the time, that trust is warranted. Sometimes it takes work to make it warranted again. Aldous Cole stands at the sink and does the work. That's enough.